Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to Silicon Sounds, audio for the rest of us. Yet another review today. This time it's a special IM, the Kefine Quatio. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. The Kefine Quatio, and I'd like to title this review as Refined and Musical with Flexibility. There are occasions where reviewing an IEM is a very involved task. That's because with some of the best IEMs I have heard, this is often the case. Excellence isn't always immediately apparent. In particular, when having the opportunity to listen to so many earphones and portable electronics as I have, whether it's a matter of being jaded or due to that infamously fickle, I should say, audio memory. This has been my experience. Then there are those occasions where an IEM sound is unpretentious and even at first listening makes it clear what it's capable of. The Kefine Quatio is one of those earphones that from opening the box and putting them in my ears, what it can do, what it's capable of was laid bare. It is a refined and musical IEM. But let's talk a little bit about the company. Kefine was founded only in 2022, so they're a newer company for sure, and released their first product a year later, Planar based IM in 2023. The driving force behind the company, and all of this next info comes directly from their website, is that they're out to produce products where high quality does not mean high prices. I think they're really serious about that because the Quatio, get you a nice closer look at it, is a perfect example of what they say, in that regard at least. How they do this is, according to their webpage, they try to keep away from, in terms of budget, there's always a budget with producing a new product, to keep the budget focused more on the IM itself, getting rid of unnecessary things like exceptionally fancy packaging and omitting unnecessary accessories, or keeping it at least to a minimum, again, while spending the majority of developmental budget on the actual IEM itself. We'll talk about that in a bit. The Quatio is their latest and most ambitious. My understanding, I believe it's the most expensive IEM in their lineup, and yet it only retails at $130 USD. The driver complement includes a dual dynamic driver setup with a 10mm and an 8mm driver, slightly different materials, paired with two balanced armatures. I'm not sure if those are compound devices, meaning 2-in-1 or whatnot. They listed as two balanced armatures. A three-way hybrid crossover, being both electric and acoustic, keeps everything in check. The Quatio also ships with 3 sets of tuning nozzles, which Kefine describes as silver for balance. They do have colors. Gold, transparent, and black, they define it as warm. All sound good, by the way. All sound good. From the company graphs, the nozzles have negligible effect on the bass and leading up to the mid-bass. All the effect has to do with the amount of mid-range up into the treble energy that is produced. Tuning wise here, we have a balanced tuning with added bass presence, definite added bass presence. Okay. With respect to the mid-range and the treble, it's more of a balanced approach, but done in a very pleasing way so as to be not that boring by any measure. The added bass lift does not make the Quatio a basshead IEM, but it's certainly clear and present when there's bass in a track. The Quatio likes power. It's reasonably easy to drive, but it takes the added power very well, and is a reasonably resolving set. It is not a set I would call as a resolution or detail monster, but what it does, it's more for the musical aspects. This is where it really shines. Overall, it is a safer type of approach with respect to mid-range and treble. I said again, it offers clean, balanced sound, and it's highly recommended that it's paired with a more capable source with good driving power, preferably a neutral source. with clean and balanced sound, of course. One thing about the Quatio, well, a few things. Number one, tip sensitive. Choice of tips is critical here. And the usual tip rolling was used to find that perfect synergy. Trust me when I say it's well worth the effort. I did use, we can see the color of the nozzle. It's silver. The other ones on top here are either gold or black. For the majority of the listening, my listening impressions, I did use the silver nozzles unless otherwise stated or indicated in the rest of this review. Specs, we have a 10mm DD paired with an 8mm and two balanced armatures. Sensitivity, 107 decibels SPL per milliwatt. Frequency response, 20 to 20 kilohertz. Impedance is 32 ohms. Connector is a standard 0.78mm 2-pin. Build and fit. Let's get into that right away. For $130, the Quatio is a good-looking IEM. Let's give you a little close-up. Hopefully, it's capturing all of this. You see the 2-pin. The shell is a basic black design with somewhat of a luster. The cap has a little white or silver-ish, bluish white, whichever color you want to call it, surround with branding in the middle. I will say that it's very nice. I, for one, really do appreciate the minimalist design approaches. Of course, here we have the indicator for right and left. For those who still have a hard time knowing which is right and which is left when it comes to IEMs. The shells are adorned with clear Kefine branding. Build quality of the aviation grade aluminum, and they are aviation grade aluminum shells, is very, very good. And the results are a seamless and solid feel. These are not a light as air IEM. They do have a little bit of weight to them, but I definitely would not call them heavy by any measure. I'm a little confused though. On the Kefine's webpage, particularly the statement making it seem that they have put all their budget into the IEM itself and not necessarily as much for the packaging accessories, I have to disagree, but in a very good way. The retail presentation, while plain, is elegantly done, but when we get to inside the box, things are not as plain. The accessories are well appointed with two clear cases of tips. Really nicely done, not the usual just in a bag. Two sets of tips, different bore sizes. One is a little softer than the other. Very well done in these plastic cases. On top of it, shall I continue? The stock cable is a keeper. Here's the stock cable. Hopefully you can catch all of it. Surprise, surprise, it is modular. Not only is it modular, it has fantastic haptics. It's soft without being too soft. It has a modular connector that has a lockdown screw mechanism. So when you do plug in any of, and it does ship, by the way, with 4.4mm balanced and 3.5mm SE, they will be secure. 2-pin, beautiful color, really nice, weighty, but soft. Really, really nice. On top of that, we have, sorry if it doesn't come out well, we have additional nozzles. Ships with two sets of nozzles. I'm not sure if you could see it through the plastic. That's the gold set. And this is the black set. What's the real difference? We'll talk about it as the review continues. And of course, we have the tips, the 4.4mm balanced and the 3.5mm single-ended. All of that is housed in a nice case. We've seen cases like this before with branding on top. Just a nice clam faux leather case. Well done, well done. So yes, they spent the money where they had to spend the money. Very well done, Kefine. Now let's talk about the sound. Bass. The Kefine Quatio is a definite sub-bass tilted IEM in terms of sound, but yet it's still not what I'm comfortable calling bass head because it doesn't define this IEM. Definite sub-bass lift with all the power and slam I'm betting most listeners would ask for. All that power without control would be a disaster though. And this is where the Quatio shines. The bass has a great rich tone with noticeably good snap and responsiveness to temper its power. So even though the sub bass has prodigious power, or it could have, depending on the track, it can, in many other implementations, different IEMs, what they say with much power is given much responsibility. The Quatio managed to handle that. Quite having prodigious bass output, but having it being sloppy and all over the place is just... And also bleeding into the mids with, depending on the tip, the nozzle used, and they just screw off, as I'll show you. Boom. There it is. Easy peasy to replace a nozzle. Can I get it back on? And there you go. It's on. The transition from the bass to the mid bass is not really muddled. It isn't at all, actually. Even with the black nozzles, which are considered warm, yes, the transition is a lot smoother, but I wouldn't say that it interferes with the mid bass. I should say the lower mids. Sorry, that much. And all this power is held in check with great responsiveness, fantastic transient response, up and down the frequency range. So let's continue. So the bass has a rich tone, noticeably good snap responsiveness. Mid bass does at times though fall behind the sub bass in sheer power, but it does present with much of the same characteristics of the lower region. At times though, the mid bass was overshadowed by the sub bass, but this is track dependent. The tuning nozzles did have an effect on the mid bass to lower mid range transition. With the smoothest transition again heard using the black or warm nozzle, and a more separated sound heard with the gold nozzles, transparent, which has the greatest boost in the mids to mid range to upper mids to treble. I found that while the gold transparent nozzles did tend to better balance out between the mid treble and the sub bass, it did at times lead to some loss of note weight in the lower mid range. This is all a personal preference. I'm a stickler for note weight. Though all the nozzles did actually sound quite good with noticeable but not earth-moving changes to the sound. Back to bass. The Quatio offers up a powerful low end with ample control. Bass transients were a standout on this IEM. Fast kick drums, twanging of a bass guitar. The Quatio never sounded muddled at all. There's a rich, thick dimensionality to the lower region that's not at all that common actually in IEMs, and this bass actually has depth to it. Nicely done. Mid-range. Mid-range, the Quatio's 3 nozzles affect the sound from the mid-range, but what stays the same, irrespective of which nozzle you use, is the element of clarity and the linear nature of the mids. While the black nozzles lead to the weightiest sonics for long listening sessions with different genres of music, I still prefer the silver balanced nozzles for the comparatively extra treble lift and consequently slightly more open detailed sound. The gold nozzles added presence lift, but at the expense of some mid-range note weight. Once again, a personal preference. At no time was there any harshness, regardless of which nozzle was used. No harshness noted. Vocals are just slightly recessed, with both male and female vocals are heard to be natural with good texturing. With the black nozzle, male vocals do take on added depth and have a chestier presentation. With the silver balanced nozzles, details in the vocals are even more apparent. The raspiness of the vocalist or even their breathing is more easily heard. In my honest opinion, the best tuning filter for me and my preference in terms of overall balance is the silver one, but depending on the genre, your mileage may vary. I just felt that the silver tuning nozzles, the ones that are on here now, did better with multiple genres for long listening sessions. One thing I noticed early on was how sharp and decisive transients and dynamics are presented on the Quatio. This great transient response capability really stands out on the Quatio and both keeps the mids from sounding too safe as well as adding to the organic playback. It's something I noticed again and again, how the Quatio handles these sharp transients. Whether it's in the bass, the mids, or the treble, it does exceptionally well. Layering and separation were good, but not necessarily class leading. I wouldn't call it a class leader on layering and separation, but it makes up for it, especially when we get to imaging and soundstage, because of the quickness of these drivers and how they're integrated. Timbre was good, but is altered depending on the nozzle choice, so be aware of that. With the added flexibility of the tuning nozzles, and I must give you a spoiler alert, I'm not usually a fan of tuning switches or nozzles. The Kefine has made sure that the basic clean and open mid-range does not change, irrespective of which the user chooses. Treble. The treble is relatively extended, but does have a roll-off somewhere starting around 10 or a little bit over kilohertz, which can be heard. There is adequate amounts of sparkle and air. It's a treble that really doesn't call attention to itself, yet is not lacking in presence. What really surprised me, even with a slight treble roll-off, was the detail retrieval in the treble. It is quite good. And this was heard on the cymbal work on the double booked album by Robert Glasper Trio, one of my favorite Nouveau Jazz albums. Very nice recording, different tracks. If you get a chance, try to give that one a listen if that's your type of music that you like. On the track No Worries, it's a trio, but their sound so full and complete. The cymbal work, the drum work, excellent. Very nice. Treble dynamics are impressive with a forceful leading edge, but a quick decay afterwards. This is a natural sounding treble with some roll off in the upper reaches heard, but not detracting from the overall musical enjoyment. Imaging and soundstage. Soundstage is moderately sized with good quantities of width, height, and depth. Imaging is precise and distinct. The standout transit response allows the Quatio to handle even busier tracks well, staying composed at all times and never sounding closed in the least. In some IAMs, it takes a more extended and sparkly treble to kind of open up the soundstage, but the Quatio, how it does it is just in the quick responsiveness of the drivers and the overall benefit that it brings to the sound. The Quatio seems to be following a trend that better sets I've heard recently have followed, and that is presenting a soundstage that is spacious but natural without one dimension overshadowing the other. It's not one that has massive width but is just okay on depth and height. The Quatio, all three dimensions play nice with each other. And for me, this makes for a more immersive experience, especially for long listening sessions. So verses, unfortunately, I don't have it with me. I do have the box. I've sent it out in my review group. This is the Kiwi Ears Etude that I had. So let's talk about that. They're both around in the same price range per se. I would say that with respect to how they sound differently, the Kiwi Ears definitely sound differently. Kiwi Ears is an interesting set which includes a KVT, a Kiwi Ears vibration transducer or a vibrating transducer as opposed to the usual bone conductor driver. Based on the Etude as more of an atypical reverb feel. In my review, I mentioned how it kind of reminded me of my father's old Philips speakers with their 15-inch woofers that were actually quite quick and snappy, but still had that heaviness and that reverb on them. Both have great power and slam, comparatively speaking, between these two IEMs, while the Etude falls behind the Quattro in terms of transient response and overall definition by virtue of that transient response. The Quatio just is incredible in that regard, whether it's bass, mid-range, mid-range or treble. With respect to the mid-range, while the etude has an uncanny ability to lay bare the texture of a vocalist overall, you can hear the raspiness in the voice. You can almost hear the air passing through their windpipe. The Quatio, while being tuned somewhat safer, is just a little bit more organic in terms of the mid-range. Treble is interesting as the etude does have more sparkle and air, but in terms of absolute detail retrieval, the Quatio does better, although the etude does very well. Let's bring this to a conclusion. Kefine should be very proud of the Quatio. The sum of the parts is greater than the whole, and this holds true of the Quatio. From the retail presentation to the standout sign, Kefine have a real winner here. $130, folks. This really hits well above its asking price. On offer is a mature, organic sound with the added flexibility of the tuning nozzles, if that really floats your boat. In this price range, and even somewhat above, I can think of only a few compelling competitors when the whole sonic package is considered. The Kefine Quatio gets a definite recommendation. Absolutely. Thank you for watching this video review of the Kefine Quatio hybrid IEM. Continue to tell your friends about the site, like and subscribe, and see you soon with more reviews on Silicon Sounds, audio for the rest of us.